Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
Welcome back to the second week of our two-week series with our guests from a group in Northern California called the Working Group. They put together or produced documentaries, and two of their documentaries have been aired nationally on PBS, and the last one also from the point of view on PBS. We welcome back to the program Patrice O'Neill from last week, and she was the executive producer of what we're going to talk about called The Fire Next Time. These documentaries deal with the life in communities and division and conflict and how you might address that. Their work has also not only been seen nationally, but then they take these documentaries to different communities and have dialogue with people in those communities. Last week on the program, we looked at Not in Our Town, which was a very powerful film about how the good people of Billings, Montana responded to hate crimes. This week, we're going to talk about the second documentary that aired recently on national public television, The Fire Next Time. And before talking with our guests, we'd like to show you about a 3-minute segment from The Fire Next Time, and we'll do that now.
What would you do if you loved the place where you live, but things were changing quickly, and you saw the fabric of town life unraveling? If neighbors you used to wave to suddenly became enemies? School teachers were bullied along with their students? If town meetings became shouting matches?
Kiss my butt.
And trails in the woods became lines drawn in the sand?
We are at a point of change that things are happening too quickly for some of the people to be able to accept.
They're trying to quiet us down because we're angry. Everything's being taken away from us, our jobs, our retirement, our recreation.
This is a story about one community facing deep divisions that are being felt across the country. Look closely, and you may see your town too.
Nobody surrender your weapons to nobody. I don't care what color the uniform is. Do not surrender your weapons.
It all started with an email from a former cop who wanted some advice about how to deal with a militia movement in Kalispell, Montana. It wasn't surprising. White supremacists and militia groups had declared the Northwest to be their homeland. Why call a filmmaker when your town is in trouble? It was because we had produced some PBS shows about people fighting hate crimes called Not in Our Town.
When Project 7 came out, I was proved like I was right. And I would have given anything to have been proved that I was wrong.
She was gaining support for a town meeting, but she says there were repercussions for her activism.
I've had a lot of threatening phone calls, sometimes middle of the night. I've had a tire slashed on my daughter's car. My daughter was also chased with a shotgun. That one was pretty scary.
At the same time, another voice was being heard.
With that, we just showed you a very small clip from this documentary, which is about an hour long. And our guest again today is the executive producer of that documentary, Patrice O'Neill from Oakland, California. You've given 3 presentations at North Idaho College and done 2 television shows with us. In the last show, Ryan Miller was also with us. Thank you for being back today.
I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm so pleased to have our 2 regular panelists, Janelle Burke, an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Erna Reinhardt, who's the director of public relations at North Idaho College. And the questioning will commence with Janelle Burke.
Welcome back to the show, Patrice. It's going to be fun to talk to you today. It was very informative last time. And so this time, let's start with something about the kinds of research that you have to do in order to do a documentary. Tell us what you do before you start the program in order to get familiar with the issues tell us something about the research.
Well, first you go to your colleagues, you go to the print journalists, because, and especially to local papers. So in this case, I read as much as possible about what was happening in Kalispell, Montana, tried to go back quite a few years to look at maybe some of the sources of the conflict, looked at outside reporters, what some outside reporters had done, and then read up about issues about patriot groups, so-called patriot groups, militia movement, and then really in this particular case, because the film deals with intense conflict over growth in the environment, I had to really ramp up my knowledge about forest policy issues, about growth issues, so many things, because so many conflicts were happening in this community. So you really have to at least have some reasonable background about these issues that you're dealing with. Even if you're not going to explore that very thoroughly in the film, you want to try to be able to understand it.
Thank you.
Arnold Reinhardt.
Welcome to the show, Patrice. Share with our viewers in this particular documentary, with such a volatile situation as it was, how important it was to gain everyone's trust so that they would speak with you, so that you could go in and really interview all of those different people to show their perspective on the issues.
I think one of the reasons people decided to trust us is that they saw the original Not in Our Town film. My first trip to Kalispell was after Brenda Kitterman had called, it was just after the Project 7 revelations. Project 7 was a group that had a huge cache of weapons. They were discovered with a huge cache of weapons, and allegedly a hit list for many of the police officers, judges, and prosecutors in the town. And the townspeople were very alarmed after this occurred, and although Brenda had been raising many concerns, it was only after these revelations that she was able to get a town meeting. She had contacted us and wanted to start a Not in Our Town movement. And she found us on the website, on the pbs.org, Not in Our Town website. And after Project 7, a lot of people responded. So I think nearly 200 people gathered that evening. This was the first day that we'd arrived in Kalispell. And she showed them the original Not in Our Town film about how people in Billings, Montana had fought against hate crimes. And there were a wide variety of people at that meeting, not just people who were upset about Project 7, but in this film, there's a radio talk show host who I think has encouraged many of the divisions in the community. And so he encouraged his listeners and his audience to attend as well. So there was a really broad spectrum of the community represented at that. And I think almost everyone from every perspective saw that film and said, okay, we have an idea of what she's going to do. So I think that was part of the trust factor. I also think that for me, this film taught me to listen in a new way. And I think listening to people very honestly, I think they can detect that. And when you sense that someone's really trying to hear you, you tend to be more open.
That's a wonderful bridge to my question. In some of your appearances at the college, there's a really intriguing discussion with the students earlier today, the day we're taping this program. And I saw in some of those wonderful students some confusion about the difference between a documentary and when a reporter comes in, there's an incident happens and the TV's there or the newspaper and they do a report for the next day. So I think this would be a great opportunity for you to explain to our viewers, one, what is the difference with this type of documentary, and it has a very different, not only structure in the film itself, but the result that will happen in communities.
Well, one of the things that we learned from the Not in Our Town film and the Not in Our Town movement that came after it, it's been 10 years now and people continue to use this film, is that there's incredible power if you intentionally make a film designed to get people to talk to each other. And that was certainly our intention with this film when we entered Kalispell. Although I have to say I never intended to make this film. that was not what I thought would happen when I began. I really thought that I was going to, in fact, I thought I was going to do a short piece about how the community responded to Project 7. It would be a nice little organizing piece that we could put on the web and say, here's how people responded to militia violence, the threat of militia violence. And then I got into the story, and it just was layer after layer after layer after layer of complexity, of conflict, of things that I was so alarmed by. At the same time, I felt this is a story that I felt was important for the whole country. This deepening polarization, these incredible conflicts over growth, these divisions over the environment, these are things that are affecting not just communities across the country, but the body politic. And so I thought, if we could spend some time in this town and look at how they were trying to deal with these conflicts, maybe it could serve as a discussion starter for other communities facing similar conflicts.
One follow-up on that is, and certainly since Not in Our Town has been around longer, 10 years, you have, and I guess this wasn't planned from the very beginning of doing Not in Our Town, but since then you have visited many places in the United States and even into Europe. And give our viewers a little bit of an idea, there's been a request from many communities to see that and then relate it to their community. How has that impacted change in other communities or getting people to work together for the success of their community? Let me just add one other point, and that is a family can be functional or dysfunctional. A community can be functional or dysfunctional. So what I hear you saying from discussions with you, that a lot of communities around the country saying we want to make sure we're functional and work together. And I think your work is finding that request around the United States.
I think it's all about the power of story, and that all of us want to see ourselves in a drama that unfolds well. And we've been so lucky to be contacted by communities that want their drama to go well. They want their own internal community drama to go well. And I think the healthiest communities are ones that openly recognize, hey, we have a problem, maybe we should address it. And those are I think, wonderful places. And we're hoping that this film can be used by communities that are, maybe want to prevent some of the problems that happen in Kalispell from happening in their communities. Maybe they see the warning signs. Maybe they see, hey, our town meetings are not going well. We're starting to raise our voices with each other. We're not having constructive conversations. It's just, getting more and more heated. Maybe we should take a look at how we deal with each other, even if we have deep differences. How do we deal with each other as neighbors? And so, that's the kind of thing that we'd like to encourage with this film, and of course, we've seen happen with Not in Our Town.
Thank you. Janelle Berg.
It strikes me that you would have to take a great deal of footage in order to get the information that you wanted. In other words, when you're doing this filming, you're going to get some beautiful scenes, but you're also going to get some scenes of people. But you have a large amount of footage, and then you decide how to break it down. Now, I realize that you're a producer, not a film editor, but do you work together with the film editor in deciding what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep?
It's a very painful process. We had 350 tapes. In the process of making this, we made about 10 trips to the valley, to the Flathead Valley in northwest Montana, and I think we talked to at least 100 people, and we had a whole variety of interviews. Then what you have to do is you have to find the right characters who can, because the audience can only meet so many people and follow the storyline. So you have to find the ones that really represent, I think, what you learned in the story, and try to say, okay, this person represents a pretty broad perspective, or this person represents a certain role in the drama of this community. And then try to distill it and find the right ones that an audience can relate to and understand. So It's a tough process. It's a really difficult process. I'll tell you, the hardest part is cutting people out who you've grown to really care about and learn from, and knowing that their voice is still inside your head as you're making the film, but you realize that you have to cut them out in order to make it a little easier on the audience.
Congratulations, I think, on some projects that are very well done. And congratulations on having them aired nationally. That is a wonderful compliment. Tell us about some of the reaction that you've received after this has aired nationally.
When we knew that this was, just as the situation was volatile in the Flathead Valley, we knew that this was going to be a difficult film for people who lived there. I think it's rather painful sometimes to look in the mirror when you're having troubles. And so we decided to take this film back to the community way before broadcast. And we held 3 screenings. We brought with us a community reconciliation leader who has done tremendous work in New Mexico in communities very divided over environmental issues. And she helped guide us and helped train some local facilitators to work with us in the community. So we had a premiere in the downtown theater in downtown Kalispell. 425 people filled the theater. And then we had dialogue afterwards. And for the most part, people were shocked but ready to face it. Some people remained very angry. They were angry at me for bringing up these problems, for saying this. I think some people were angry because they felt that if the other side was in the film, that I had not told the truth, and that because I presented both sides, that I was being dishonest. And I guess, you know, one of the most disturbing things to me is that someone in the audience said, "You made him look like a regular person." And that was exactly my intention. One of the people in the film, I think, had a whole series of death threats. And it was a regular situation where people literally talk about killing this man who's an environmentalist. And politically, whether you agree with him or not, I considered that to be a danger sign. When you're able to dehumanize someone in that manner, when they're not a human anymore, where you talk about them as an object, I felt that that was a very dangerous sign. And it's one of the things I did want to do on every side, is to humanize people. Let people who don't normally talk to each other appear in the film, and let the community sort of see what their perspective is and where they're coming from as a regular person. So the most exciting part for me was the following 2 nights. We did screenings in Columbia Falls and in Whitefish, where we had roundtable discussions. And I was so heartened by people coming together who really disagreed with each other and talking to each other and saying, let's dig in, let's do some problem solving. And that discussion has really laid the basis for our work and what we hope to do with The Fire Next Time. And that is to take not only the film, but the community screenings and try to generate some citizen solutions to some of these problems, and not just have it come from the lawmakers and the civic leaders, but have it come from the citizens. Have them look at the film and say, okay, what do we do now? And then try to share that with each other as we put it up on our website and to continue to do filming around this.
I have viewed the film twice now, and the second time around you get some things you didn't get the first time, and I think that's very healthy. But I had a lot of different reactions, but one that I was particularly wanting to have you to address. As you go through the film, you did a really excellent job of putting on the screen the viewpoints of the different individuals and groups, and that was causing the purpose of the film in the first place and the division that was there. But I was so impressed that near the end of the film, and I know you were there several times in this process, one gentleman in particular said, "I'm so tired of the fighting," or "I'm so tired of the meetings." He was worn out. And I think you sensed that, along with the mayor was a remarkable person, and Pam Kennedy, I think she was remarkably healing person and conciliatory. But when you invite her and the community to the photo or out in the field, I just felt that the film had somehow captured what you were trying to do. There were people in that setting, as she spoke that evening, that were on different sides. Am I reading that correctly? Did the film help in some way for people to say, and obviously people get tired of ongoing division, but I was impressed with that final scene.
Well, I think one of the reasons I kept going is that people did need a voice, and they needed to. I think one of the things I say in the film is that people began to say to us what they couldn't say to each other, and that the film and the camera started to take on a role of, I want to talk to my neighbors, but I can't really, so I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling, and I'm going to tell you what I'm experiencing. And so much of this is about this drastic conflict in the economic divide. People who've made their living off the land for a very long time, and a lot of that for a whole variety of reasons. Some of it having to do with, environmental law changes, but some of it having to do with NAFTA, economic shifts, a whole variety of reasons. The economy is changing, new people are moving in, and that economic divide and that rapid change is so painful to people. It's so incredibly painful. Literally, every time I'd go up there, there'd be a new store. And I thought, wow, this is shocking. Where did that Super 8 come from? And if I felt that way, I could imagine how people who'd lived there their whole lives were feeling about these changes. So there's an incredible amount of grieving and pain in dealing with these transitions that are going on with this community. And so, I think the film became a sort of box for people to speak to, and that, I hope that it was a helpful tool for people in the community to really talk to each other.
Your film became a medium for them to speak to one another, without doing it directly, but then the showing did that. One other quick point, economic consequences. I know that you've mentioned this before, and it's happening in a lot of growth communities. It's happening, and not only there, but in Bozeman. It's happening in our area here, and a home over there in Kalispell that used to cost $125,000, maybe now be $350,000. Well, that's really an impact on young people trying to get a home. So that all comes into the picture too. Before I go back to the panel, I would like to have our staff to put up 3 websites, because people who watch our show, some of them may want to get in touch with you and how they may learn more about this. So if our staff would put up those 3 websites they have, you might also repeat them.
Right. The P.O.V. website on The Fire Next Time, I think, is rather extensive, and it gives you some background. It'll give you a description. You can see a clip of the program. There's a very lively dialogue on the website as well, but that's pbs.org/POV/The Fire Next Time. You can also find out more about Not in Our Town at our pbs.org website /NIOT, and more about us, the Working Group, at theworkinggroup.org.
Thank you very much, Janelle.
You've been in communities of different sizes. So can you tell us, how are they the same and how are they different? What have you found?
Well, I think Tony's analogy about functional and dysfunctional is really appropriate, is that there are communities with an incredible amount of social capital and an incredible amount of active citizens. And then there are those that I think where that's less of an asset, and that's a real, I think, difference in communities. I think part of what's interesting to me is watching, gauging, and finding those people who are willing to say, okay, let's face our problems. That's a really hard thing to do. And when you find that, and I found so many people in Kalispell who said, let's face it, the mayor, Gary Hall, the police chief, the sheriff, they were all people who said, and you see them in the community photo, they encourage people to come together at the end of the film and, join together in this community photo. But when you have people who say, let's open our eyes, let's face our problems, I think it just gives a town such a leg up and so much more strength, because we'd all like to deny our problems. We'd all really rather they go away. I use the analogy of I was in a fire once in my house, and I remember smelling smoke, and I wanted to go to sleep. I just wanted to go back to sleep and pretend that I was only dreaming. And I finally woke up and said, I really have to deal with this. And I think sometimes we really have to pay attention to the smoke.
Just a little footnote. We said the mayor, and then we said Gary Hall. Gary Hall's the county commissioner.
County commissioner.
And the mayor is Pam Kennedy.
Right.
Yes. Arna?
Patrice, share with us what your next project may be. Do you know?
Well, we are doing a new Not in Our Town film, which we're very excited about, a new Not in Our Town national film, new stories. This will be the third in the series. We did Not in Our Town 2. You can find out all about this on the website. But we recently finished a regional special in Northern California. We're going to take some of those stories and put them into a new national special, which we hope to air in 2006. We're very excited about that.
Great.
Let's talk just a minute about some of the places you've been around the United States. On one of your films, you do list a lot of those communities, and so let's just give a few of those examples.
Oh, there's so many, and I was just in the past year there have been 3 new Not in Our Town cities: Howell, Michigan, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Fremont, California, which is right in our own backyard. We've been able to go to some wonderful places. Bloomington, Illinois is one of the first Not in Our Town cities. We're hoping to have a conference there, a national gathering of Not in Our Town activists sometime this year. There are 5 Not in Our Town cities in Illinois, including Rockford, Illinois. I had the opportunity to go about a year and a half ago to Greenville, South Carolina. And one of the things the Not in Our Town movement did there is they sparked a battle for a Martin Luther King holiday. This is one of the few counties in the United States that still did not recognize the holiday. And that became a huge battle in this community because there were people on their county board that were still resisting that. And
on that note, let's bring the program to conclusion. I'm sorry to do that. The clock wins again. Patrice O'Neill with the Working Group and her documentaries has been our guest. Thank you, both you and Ryan Miller, for your stay in North Idaho College and in our community. It's been a joy having you here.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you have enjoyed the last 2 weeks in this very, very dramatic and dynamic work of how communities deal with their issues. I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time, and we will turn to yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.